Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The People's Duchess. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've been going live. Thank you guys for joining my live. It was a really good time in the last live. It's been really fun doing the lives with you guys. That wedding was unhinged. First of all, the Catholic weddings are unhinged and everybody was just so brown. I was just like, dang, everybody's so tan and just gorgeous. It was insane. The fashion was unhinged. The cake was unhinged. It was actually a 3-day ceremony. So like that's unhinged. The whole thing was just unhinged beginning to end. And I loved every minute of it. It was kind of hard like cutting it down from the 3.5 hours that the broadcast was into like a palatable 20-30 minute live stream to react to, but it was totally worth it. I had only seen clips from the infamous crying when she was really having a hard time pulling it together. But that was like, oh, well, I'm not gonna give anything away, but I'm telling you that wedding was unhinged in the best possible way. And learning more about Charlene and Albert and the Casaragis of Monaco, oh my gosh, well, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Unhinged. Respectfully. Today's video I'm also really super excited about. I love Star Wars, and one of my favorite movies is A New Hope. It is still just as relevant today, if not more relevant today than it has ever been. So in my calculations, that is like the most successful movie of all time, because even when you have box office giants like Avatar and Jaws and the Godfather trilogies, some of the best movies of all time, I think that Star Wars, for not just its impact, but also its longevity, is what edges it out. The only movie series franchise that's touching Star Wars, even just a little bit, is Indiana Jones. People are gonna always wanna see Harrison Ford in a little hat cracking a whip. I will watch Harrison Ford in a little hat cracking a whip any which way he turns up. So if you're talking in terms of like, the fans will come out no matter what for this, they will ride for this, they will go hard for this. I think the only other movie that we're talking about here besides Star Wars is Indiana Jones and Friday. Black Panther is also one of those movies. There's just something about the ingenuity of being able to create a whole new world and answer some of those questions. The draw of Star Wars is bringing in a world where you see what that could possibly look like, where there's like human alien hybrids and interface, is something extremely exciting and something that I think every person on earth has thought of at least once, even if you're not like gung-ho about interplanetary travel or anything. I learned about Mellody Hobson when she came on to the Archetypes podcast, and her episode was episode 9, To Be or Not to Be. She was there with Victoria Jackson, and her and Meghan discussed the archetype of the B word at work. So when you're like a professional woman and you're in a position of power in any role or capacity, if you're an ambitious person, they like to label you as a capital B or whatever the case might be if you have aspirations. Totally resonated with this particular episode. I was working my way up through the corporate ladder. I was the youngest director at my last company. It was just a lot of ambition. Also, the added being a woman in what is often primarily male dominated and white dominated fields, it can be difficult if you're not that. So if you're not straight, not Christian, not a man, not white, like it can be kind of difficult when you're trying to ascend that corporate ladder. So Mellody has definitely done that, and reading up on her biography was just nothing short of incredible. I took a peek at her LinkedIn. She's been the CEO of Ariel Investments for like 34 years. I was really impressed with Sam's 15 years at Soho House, and here comes Mellody, and she's been at the same place for 34 years. That's pretty much my whole life plus a few years. Like, bro. Prior to that, she was the chairman at DreamWorks, and she was also a George Lucas Education Foundation board member. Well, she still is actually a board member there. She's on a lot of boards. The Investment Company Institute Board of Governors, she's in the executive committee for that. She's the director at JP Morgan and Chase Company. She's like one of their directors. She's a co-chair of the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. The Sundance Institute, she's a trustee. She's a board member of the Chicago Public Education Fund. She's the chair of the Economic Club of Chicago, and she's a trustee at the Rockefeller Foundation, which is a very, very prestigious organization. It reminds me of the Rhodes Scholarship Organization. Among famous Rhodes scholars are Rachel Maddow and Secretary Pete, or Mayor Pete. I could listen to Pete Buttigieg speak about anything. He could describe a Star Wars Lego set to me, and I will think it's the most brilliant thing this man has ever said. Being the chairman on all of these boards, she's literally sitting at the table for some very important conversations. What I really love about what she said in the podcast was that they would love to see you humble. They would love to see you more humble. They don't expect you to walk in there with your head held high, because then that's their entryway for you to be labeled a B or aggressive or insert any stereotype here. I'm very nice, but I'm not humble. I've worked my butt off. And I don't think that any woman should take that like be humble situation to heart. Humility was created specifically for women when they started getting big britches, when they started thinking to themselves, wait a minute, why am I property? Why am I being married off to this random old man as a treaty between my family and his? I believe that is when the concept of be humble, be grateful became a thing. If you are a person who has worked hard, fought tooth and nail for where you are now, and you should be proud of that. I mean, guys, they will wash their hands correctly or put up a dish in the dishwasher instead of just leaving it there, whatever the case might be, and then be so proud and get so many accolades. There's just no reason why a woman who is as established as a Mellody Hobson, a Meghan Markle, should be humble in their endeavors. You are creating lifelines for people. You are creating communities for individuals who have never felt seen before. There is nothing humble about that. And in the words of the great philosopher Kamala Harris, not everyone aspires to be humble. Why should you be humble? Honestly, take a minute, take some personal self-inventory here and ask yourself, why should I be humble? Look at the examples that you have of the top performing males in the world and ask yourself, do they exhibit humility on a day-to-day basis? Do their actions match with what your expectations are of people who are very wealthy and should be humble? They only talk about humility when it comes to women. And forget that. We are not doing that. We're not being gaslit with this whole idea of women should be very small, very palatable, very humble, very coquette-ish. Be whoever you want to be. And especially if you're a boss badass, like a Meghan, like a Mellody, like a Naomi, like a Tyra, like an Oprah, be who you are. You've earned the accolade and no one can take that away from you, period. And it's hard not to step on people on your way up. It's hard not to screw a lot of people over on your way up to getting millions and billions and living this life of a Bond villain. You're really in a position where you have to, if you want to become that influential and powerful, you have to put the feelings of probably millions of people aside and then just downright hurt several others. So when you see someone like a Meghan, like a Mellody, who hasn't done that in their pursuit of success, it's impressive. This is an educational channel. We love to highlight an impressive woman. We love to highlight things that people do that add to the zeitgeist. This woman's resume is insane. My mind does not compute. She's probably someone that Meghan also looks up to and sees as a very inspirational person. I can't think of another reason why you would have her on a podcast if that weren't the case. Game recognized game here, and the biography is just bananas. How can you not be impressed? They have the same kind of friend groups and circles. Oprah is a mutual friend. And not to diminish Mrs. Hobson's accomplishments, achievements, or anything else, but how awesome is it that the cherry on top of this impressive cake is that she's married to my personal hero, George Lucas. I cannot imagine what it is like to be married to a god. I'd imagine it's like being married to like Dionysus or Helios, the sun god himself. I would have so many life-size figurines, Boba Fett figurines I could actually wear. I would have all the things. I would have an I would have an Ewok. At the end of the day, it really does boil down to you're a badass babe and you are married to the greatest human being in modern history. Okay, so for all of history, there was like a guy who discovered we could all walk upright, and then there was like the guy that figured out some dry wood and a piece of maybe reflective something and some other stuff held up to the sun at just so angle, boom, fire. That guy was a god. There's like those two guys, and then there's George Lucas. Don't get me wrong, Mellody Hobson is a genius, brilliant goddess. He's among great company. I don't have like a god complex really about him, right? I'm not talking literally he's a god. I just would love to pick his brain and understand what was going through his head. Jabba the Hutt, for example. Was that a nightmare, George? Was that a nightmare creature that came into your head? How? What? When? Were you eating something gross? Like, how did it happen? I just need to know that one question. And I love that he talked about the inspiration. He said explicitly that the empire in question was the U.S., British and French empires, the traditional oppressive empires of the people. He would have been born around the time Jim Crow was still hanging out. He just told that story so brilliantly. I could be wrong. I haven't seen every movie in the world, but I'm still gonna go with Star Wars. So that's my quick recap of Mellody Hobson, A New Hope. Her career has been really exciting to follow, and I'm looking forward to seeing her and Meghan do more in the near future, hopefully. That's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Set your notification bells if you like this video, like and subscribe. Please remember to be kind, and I will see you later. Bye.